Welcome back to the Cozy Curiosity channel, where we explore the wonders of our world as you drift into restful sleep. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through nature itself, through forests and meadows, rivers and mountains, through the intricate web of life that surrounds us all. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to be carried along on a peaceful exploration of the natural world. Let's begin. Nature is not a single thing, but an endless conversation. It's the whisper of leaves responding to wind, the silent exchange between roots beneath the soil, the patient dance of seasons turning. Every organism, from the smallest bacterium to the tallest tree, exists in relationship. Nothing stands alone. Even in what seems like stillness, nature is speaking, adapting, responding. And tonight, we'll listen to some of those conversations, one gentle fact at a time. Trees talk to each other through underground networks. Beneath the forest floor, something remarkable happens. Tree roots connect through vast networks of fungal threads called mycorrhizal networks. These fungal highways allow trees to share nutrients, water, and even warning signals. A Douglas fir might send carbon to a nearby birch during winter, when the birch has lost its leaves. An older tree, sometimes called a mother tree, can nurture younger saplings in the shade below. When one tree is attacked by insects, it can send chemical warnings through the network, prompting neighbors to increase their own defenses. This underground internet connects entire forests in a living web of mutual support. Scientists have discovered that this network doesn't just connect trees of the same species. It crosses boundaries, linking different kinds of trees, shrubs, and plants into one vast communication system. In some forests, a single fungal network can connect hundreds of trees across acres of land. These mother trees can recognize their own offspring and send them extra nutrients. The forest, it turns out, is not a collection of individuals competing for resources. It's a community, a family, supporting and protecting its members through an invisible web of connection. The smell of rain has a name. That fresh, earthy scent that rises when rain hits dry ground is called petrichor. It comes from oils that plants release during dry periods, which accumulate in soil and rocks. When rain falls, these oils are released into the air, along with a compound called geosmin, produced by soil bacteria. Geosmin is one of the most potent scents to the human nose. We can detect it at concentrations as low as 5 parts per trillion. Our ancient ancestors may have relied on this smell to find water in arid landscapes, and that ancient connection still resonates in us today. The word petrichor itself comes from Greek, petra, meaning stone, and ichor, the fluid that flows in the veins of the gods in Greek mythology. The scent brings us peace, a smell memory encoded deep in our biology, telling us that life-giving moisture has arrived. Different soils produce different variations of this scent. Desert rains smell different from prairie rains. The forest, after a storm, carries its own unique perfume. And with each rainfall, billions of bacteria release geosmin into the air, creating an olfactory signal that spreads for miles, announcing to all living things that water has returned to the land. Rivers carve their own paths through time. Water is patient but persistent. Over millions of years, rivers shape entire landscapes, The Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon, cutting through rock layer by layer, revealing 2 billion years of Earth's history in striped stone walls. The canyon is over a mile deep in places, and the river is still cutting deeper. Rivers don't flow in straight lines. They meander, creating curves and bends that shift over time. The fastest current flows on the outside of each bend, eroding the bank, while sediment settles on the inside, building new land. This constant reshaping creates fertile floodplains and diverse habitats. Over time, a meander can loop so far that the river cuts across the neck, creating an oxbow lake. A river is not just water moving downhill. It's a sculptor, an architect, a force that writes its story into the land itself. The gradient of a river determines its power. Young rivers in mountains race downhill, carrying boulders and cutting deep, V-shaped valleys. As they reach flatter land, they slow and widen, depositing sediment and creating deltas. Every river tells the story of the landscape it flows through, reading the geology in its path and responding, always taking the path of least resistance, always finding a way forward. Moss is older than flowering plants. Long before roses bloomed or grasses waved in the wind, moss covered the earth. These simple plants emerged around 450 million years ago, helping to transform bare rock into soil. Moss has no roots in the traditional sense, just tiny structures called rhizoids that anchor it in place. It absorbs water and nutrients directly through its leaves, taking what it needs from rain and air. Some mosses can survive complete dehydration, appearing dead and brittle, then spring back to life within minutes when water returns. They can survive in extreme conditions: freezing temperatures, drought, even radiation. They thrive in shade and dampness, carpeting forest floors and coating ancient stones. In their quiet, unassuming way, moss helped make the world ready for all the plants that followed. They were among the first plants to colonize land, helping to break down rock and create the first soils. Without moss, the terrestrial world as we know it might never have developed. Today, there are over 12,000 species of moss found on every continent, including Antarctica. Some form thick cushions that hold water like sponges. Others create delicate tracery on tree bark. They provide habitat for tiny invertebrates, retain moisture in forests, and prevent erosion. Moss doesn't demand attention, but it's been patiently supporting life on land for nearly 500 million years. Mountains grow and shrink over millennia. The Himalayas, Earth's tallest mountain range, are still growing. They rise about 5 millimeters per year as the Indian tectonic plate continues to push into the Eurasian plate. This collision has been happening for 50 million years, and it's not finished yet. Mount Everest, the tallest peak, gains a few millimeters each year. But mountains don't last forever. Wind, rain, ice, and time wear them down. The Appalachian Mountains in North America were once as tall as the Himalayas, but now stand much lower, rounded and weathered by hundreds of millions of years of erosion. Mountains are born in violence, thrust upward by tectonic forces, then slowly dissolved by the patient work of erosion. They seem permanent to us, but on geological timescales, they rise like waves and fall like tides. Some mountains are volcanic, built by eruptions that pile lava and ash into towering cones. Others form when layers of rock are folded and thrust upward by continental collisions. The Rockies, the Alps, the Andes. Each range tells a different story of Earth's restless crust, and as mountains rise, they create their own weather, intercept moisture, and shape entire climate zones. They divide continents into distinct regions, influencing where rivers flow, where rain falls, and where life can thrive. Fireflies synchronize their flashing in some species. In certain parts of the world, fireflies don't just blink randomly. They coordinate, creating waves of light that pulse through the darkness in perfect unison. In places like the Great Smoky Mountains or the mangrove forests of Southeast Asia, thousands of fireflies flash together, on and off, like a living constellation breathing in rhythm. The synchronization happens because each firefly adjusts its timing based on its neighbors. If a firefly flashes slightly before the others, it gradually shifts its rhythm to match. If it's behind, it speeds up. Through these tiny adjustments, the whole group falls into sync without any leader or central control. Scientists still study how they achieve this remarkable coordination. It's an example of emergent behavior, where simple rules followed by individuals create complex patterns at the group level. Males flash to attract females, and synchronizing may help them stand out in a crowd, or it might reduce the advantage any single male has, creating a more level playing field. Whatever the evolutionary reason, the result is breathtaking. On warm summer nights, entire trees pulse with light, thousands of tiny signals merging into one luminous heartbeat. It's a reminder that beauty often arises not from control, but from connection, from simple interactions repeated across a community until something magical emerges. Snow crystals are never identical. Every snowflake forms around a tiny particle of dust in the atmosphere. As it falls through clouds, water vapor freezes onto this nucleus, creating branches that grow outward. The exact shape depends on temperature, humidity, and the unique path each crystal takes through the air. Because no two snowflakes travel the same route through the atmosphere, encountering the same exact conditions of temperature and moisture, no two develop identical structures. Some form simple needles or columns. Others create elaborate six-sided stars with intricate branching patterns. The hexagonal symmetry comes from the molecular structure of water ice, but the details are infinitely variable. Some snowflakes are flat plates. Others are hollow columns or capped columns with plates on both ends. Each one is temporary, fragile, and unrepeatable. Billions fall every winter, each one a small miracle of geometry and chance. A single snowflake might contain up to 180 billion molecules of water, all arranged in a unique crystalline structure. When snowflakes fall in calm conditions at temperatures just below freezing, they can grow to enormous sizes, sometimes over 2 inches in diameter. But regardless of size, each one is distinct, a tiny work of art created by physics, chemistry, and chance, existing briefly before melting back into the water cycle. Ancient forests store centuries of carbon. Old-growth forests do more than look majestic. They act as massive carbon vaults. Trees absorb carbon dioxide from the air during photosynthesis and lock it away in wood, roots, and soil. The older and larger the forest, the more carbon it stores. Some forests have been accumulating carbon for hundreds or even thousands of years. A single old-growth tree can contain tons of carbon in its trunk, branches, and root system. But the carbon storage doesn't stop with living trees. Dead wood, slowly decomposing on the forest floor, holds carbon for decades or centuries. The soil itself, enriched by thousands of years of leaf fall and root growth, can store even more carbon than the trees above. When these forests are cut down, Much of that stored carbon returns to the atmosphere as the wood decays or burns. Protecting old-growth forests isn't just about preserving beauty or habitat. It's about maintaining ancient stores of captured carbon, climate regulation, written into every ring of every ancient tree. These forests are irreplaceable in human timescales. You can plant new trees, but it takes centuries for a forest to develop the complex structure, biodiversity, and carbon storage capacity of old growth. They're living libraries of carbon, archives of atmosphere, holding within their wood the story of centuries of photosynthesis. Coral reefs are built by tiny animals. Coral looks like colorful rock formations, but it's actually made by tiny creatures called polyps. Each polyp is a soft-bodied animal related to jellyfish and sea anemones, usually just a few millimeters across. They secrete calcium carbonate, which hardens into a protective skeleton beneath and around them. Over time, millions of these skeletons build up into massive reef structures. The Great Barrier Reef, stretching over 1,400 miles along Australia's coast, is the largest living structure on Earth, visible from space. It's actually composed of nearly 3,000 individual reefs and 900 islands. Coral polyps have a symbiotic relationship with algae called zooxanthellae living in their tissues. These algae photosynthesize, producing sugars that feed the coral. In return, the coral provides the algae with a protected environment and access to sunlight. This partnership allows corals to build massive structures in nutrient-poor tropical waters. Together, they create ecosystems that support a quarter of all marine species, despite covering less than 1% of the ocean floor. Fish, sea turtles, sharks, rays, crustaceans, mollusks, and countless other creatures depend on coral reefs for food, shelter, and breeding grounds. But reefs are fragile. Rising ocean temperatures cause corals to expel their algae, a process called bleaching that can kill the coral if prolonged. These ancient architects of the ocean, building their stone gardens for thousands of years, now face an uncertain future. Glaciers flow like slow rivers. Glaciers may look frozen and still, but they're constantly moving. Ice flows downhill under its own immense weight, sometimes just centimeters per year, sometimes meters per day, depending on the glacier's size, slope, and temperature. As glaciers move, they grind down the bedrock beneath them, plucking rocks from the valley floor and walls and dragging them along. This process carves distinctive U-shaped valleys and creates features like cirques, hanging valleys, and fjords. The ice at the bottom of a glacier can melt from the pressure and friction, creating a layer of water that lubricates its movement. Some glaciers surge, suddenly accelerating to speeds hundreds of times faster than normal. The blue color of glacier ice comes from its density. Compressed over centuries by the weight of snow above, the ice becomes incredibly dense, with almost all air bubbles squeezed out. This dense ice absorbs all colors of light except blue, which reflects back to our eyes. When glaciers melt, they reveal records of ancient atmospheres. Air bubbles trapped in ice cores preserve samples of air from thousands of years ago, giving scientists windows into Earth's climate history. By drilling deep into glaciers and ice sheets, researchers can reconstruct temperature, atmospheric composition, and even volcanic activity going back hundreds of thousands of years. Glaciers are frozen time machines, holding Earth's climate secrets in their icy depths. Some plants can count. The Venus flytrap doesn't snap shut at the first touch. It counts. The plant has tiny trigger hairs inside each trap, usually 3, on each lobe. When an insect brushes one hair, nothing happens. The plant waits. But if a second hair is touched within about 20 seconds, the trap closes in a fraction of a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. This counting mechanism prevents the plant from wasting energy on false alarms like falling debris or raindrops. Only something moving, something alive, will trigger multiple hairs in sequence. Once closed, the plant continues to count. If the prey struggles, triggering more hairs, the trap seals tighter and begins digestion. The more the prey moves, the more digestive enzymes the plant secretes. This allows the plant to calibrate its response to the size of its meal. Small prey might not be worth the energy expenditure, so the trap reopens. Larger prey triggers full digestion. Without a brain or neurons, without anything resembling an animal nervous system, the plant still processes information and makes decisions. It uses calcium ions moving through its cells to keep track of touches, essentially creating a short-term memory. The Venus flytrap grows in nutrient-poor soils where nitrogen is scarce. By catching and digesting insects, it supplements the nutrients it can't get from the soil. It's an elegant solution to a difficult problem, and it requires the ability to distinguish between useful prey and random stimuli. In the quiet bogs of the Carolinas, these plants sit patiently, counting touches, waiting for their next meal. The desert blooms after rain. Deserts seem barren most of the year, but they're just waiting. When rare rains finally arrive, the landscape transforms almost overnight. Seeds that have laid dormant for months or even years suddenly germinate. Within days, the ground erupts in wildflowers, yellow, purple, pink and white, carpeting the sand and gravel. This phenomenon, called a superbloom, can cover thousands of square miles. Desert plants have evolved to take advantage of brief wet periods. Annual wildflowers complete their entire life cycle in just a few weeks. They sprout, grow, flower, and produce seeds before the water disappears. Their seeds have tough coats that can survive years of drought and extreme temperatures. Some seeds require specific triggers to germinate: a certain amount of rainfall, particular temperature ranges, or even chemicals from the parent plant that wash away only in heavy rains. This ensures they don't waste their chance on a brief sprinkle. The timing has to be perfect. Too little rain and nothing happens. But when conditions align, the desert reveals its hidden potential, a carpet of color in a land of stone and sand. Bees, butterflies, and other pollinators that seemed absent suddenly appear, taking advantage of the brief abundance. Birds arrive to feed on seeds and insects. The desert, far from being lifeless, simply operates on a different schedule, patiently waiting for water's return. Bamboo can grow 3 feet in a single day. Bamboo holds the record as the fastest growing plant on Earth. Some species can grow up to 35 inches in 24 hours. If you sit quietly in a bamboo forest during the growing season, you might actually hear it growing, creaks and cracks as new shoots push upward with tremendous force. Bamboo shoots have been known to push through asphalt and concrete. This incredible growth comes from the plant's strategy. Bamboo spends years, sometimes decades, developing an extensive underground root system called a rhizome network. This network stores energy and spreads horizontally underground, occasionally sending up shoots that become the bamboo culms we see above ground. Then, when conditions are right, it explodes upward, using all that stored energy. The shoots are already formed underground, like telescopes waiting to extend. When they emerge, they don't get wider, only taller. Each segment of the shoot expands simultaneously, driven by water pressure inside the cells. Some bamboo species only flower once every several decades, then die. The timing is so precise that entire groves, even ones separated by thousands of miles, will flower in the same year. Scientists still don't fully understand this mysterious synchronization. After flowering, the bamboo dies, but the seeds it produces ensure the next generation. In some cultures, this mass flowering causes famine among animals that depend on bamboo, like pandas. But it's also a renewal, a chance for new genetic combinations and forest rejuvenation. Fog is a cloud touching the ground. There's no real difference between fog and clouds, except altitude. Both are made of tiny water droplets suspended in air. We call it fog when it forms at ground level, and a cloud when it forms higher up. Fog occurs when air near the ground cools to its dew point, the temperature at which water vapor condenses into visible droplets. There are different types of fog. Radiation fog forms on clear, calm nights when the ground radiates heat and cools the air above it. Advection fog forms when warm, moist air moves over a cooler surface, like when tropical air flows over cold ocean currents. Valley fog forms when cold air drains into valleys at night, cooling the air to its dew point. Some ecosystems depend entirely on fog. Coastal redwood forests in California capture moisture from fog even during dry summers. The fog drips from needles and provides water when rain is scarce. A large redwood can capture hundreds of gallons of water from fog each year. In the Namib Desert, beetles have evolved to collect fog on their backs, channeling droplets to their mouths. They tilt their bodies into the fog-laden wind, and water condenses on the waxy bumps of their wing covers, then rolls down grooves to their mouth. Fog is not just weather. For some, it's life itself, a vital source of moisture in places where rain rarely falls. Autumn leaves don't change color. They reveal it. The brilliant reds, oranges, and yellows of fall foliage were there all along, hidden beneath green chlorophyll. During spring and summer, chlorophyll dominates, masking other pigments, while the leaf performs photosynthesis, capturing sunlight and converting it to energy for the tree. As days shorten and temperatures drop, trees begin to shut down for winter. They stop producing chlorophyll, and the green fades away, revealing the colors that were there all along. What remains are the carotenoids, pigments that were always present, responsible for yellow and orange hues. These are the same pigments that make carrots orange and corn yellow. Red and purple colors come from anthocyanins, which some trees produce specifically in autumn, possibly to protect leaves as they withdraw nutrients before dropping. The exact colors depend on tree species, weather conditions, and soil chemistry. Sugar maples turn brilliant scarlet. Aspens turn golden yellow. Oaks become russet brown. Each tree's timing is different, creating waves of color that move through forests like slow fire, from the mountains down to the valleys, from north to south. The trigger is photoperiod, the length of day, which tells trees that winter is approaching. But temperature, moisture, and even the tree's health affect the intensity of color. A warm, wet fall might produce muted colors. A sunny fall with cool nights tends to produce the most vibrant displays, as sugars trapped in leaves combine with bright sunlight to enhance red pigments. Thunder is the sound of air exploding. Lightning heats the air around it to temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, around 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This happens in a fraction of a second. This sudden, extreme heat causes air to expand so rapidly it creates a shockwave. That shockwave is thunder. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second, essentially instantaneous at the distances we perceive. Sound travels much slower, about 767 miles per hour at sea level. So we see lightning before we hear its thunder. You can estimate how far away a storm is by counting the seconds between flash and sound. Every 5 seconds equals roughly 1 mile. Thunder can rumble for several seconds because sound waves bounce off clouds, hills, and buildings, creating echoes that arrive at different times. Lightning channels can be several miles long, and different parts of the channel produce sound that reaches you at different moments, stretching the thunder into a long roll. Close lightning produces a sharp crack. Distant lightning creates a low rumble. It's not the anger of the sky or the gods. It's physics. The sound of superheated air torn apart and crashing back together. Every thunderstorm is a factory of electrical discharge, moving charge between clouds and ground, balancing the electrical potential built up by moving ice particles within the storm. And with each flash, the air explodes and speaks. Some stones move across deserts on their own. In Death Valley, California, heavy rocks leave long trails across the dry lake bed of racetrack playa, as if they've been pushed by invisible hands. Some of these rocks weigh hundreds of pounds. Their trails can be hundreds of feet long, zigzagging across the cracked mud. For decades, this was a genuine mystery. No one had ever seen the rocks move. Then, in 2014, researchers finally witnessed and recorded the phenomenon. They discovered that during rare winter storms, the playa fills with a shallow layer of water, just a few inches deep, that freezes overnight into thin sheets of ice. In the morning, as temperatures rise, the ice begins to melt and break apart into large floating panels. When gentle winds push these ice panels, which can be hundreds of feet across, the rocks embedded in the ice are dragged along, leaving trails in the soft mud below. It takes precise conditions: water, freezing temperatures, thin ice, sun and wind, all occurring in the right sequence. But when they align, stones sail across the desert in a slow, silent dance, pushed by wind and ice, writing their paths into the mud. The trails can last for years before erosion erases them, mysterious records of rare events witnessed by almost no one. Seeds can wait for decades to sprout. The soil beneath your feet may be full of sleeping potential. Some seeds can remain dormant for years, even centuries, waiting for the right conditions to germinate. They're equipped with remarkable survival mechanisms. Lotus seeds found in a dry lake bed in China successfully sprouted after more than 1,000 years. Arctic lupine seeds, frozen in permafrost for 10,000 years, were revived by scientists and grew into healthy flowering plants. Seeds have evolved various dormancy mechanisms to survive harsh conditions and wait for optimal timing. Some have thick, hard protective coats that must be worn away by weathering, digestion by animals, or fire before water can penetrate and germination begin. Others contain chemical inhibitors that must be washed away by sufficient rainfall. Some require specific temperature cycles, experiencing cold before warmth, ensuring they don't sprout before winter has passed. Certain seeds need light to germinate, staying dormant until soil is disturbed and they're brought near the surface. They're time capsules, tiny packages of life, waiting patiently in darkness for their moment to begin. This seed bank in the soil ensures that even if all the mature plants of a species are destroyed, the population can regenerate when conditions improve. After a forest fire, the soil may release seeds that have been waiting for decades, creating a flush of growth from species that seemed absent. The soil remembers, holding the genetic potential of past generations, ready to resurrect them when the time is right. The ocean has rivers flowing through it. Ocean currents are like rivers within the sea, massive streams of water flowing in regular patterns around the globe. The Gulf Stream moves warm water from the Caribbean up the eastern coast of North America and across to Europe, moderating climates on both continents. Without the Gulf Stream, Britain and Ireland would be much colder, more like Labrador in Canada, which lies at the same latitude. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current circles the entire continent of Antarctica, connecting all the world's oceans and moving more water than all the rivers on Earth combined. These currents are driven by multiple forces. Wind pushes surface waters. Earth's rotation deflects moving water through the Coriolis effect. Differences in water temperature and salinity create density variations that drive deep circulation. The ocean has a global conveyor belt of currents, with warm surface waters flowing toward the poles and cold, dense, salty water sinking and flowing back toward the equator at depth. This thermohaline circulation takes centuries to complete one loop. It transports heat around the planet, moderating climate and making life possible in regions that would otherwise be uninhabitable. These currents also transport nutrients, bringing rich waters to areas that support abundant marine life. They carry larvae and plankton across vast distances, connecting ecosystems thousands of miles apart. In a sense, the ocean is not one body of water, but many rivers flowing through each other. Invisible highways linking distant shores. Moving heat, nutrients, and life in patterns that have shaped Earth's climate for millions of years. Lichen can survive in space. Lichen, those crusty patches on rocks and trees, are among Earth's most resilient organisms. They're not a single organism, but a partnership between fungi and algae, or cyanobacteria, living as one. The fungus provides structure and protection. The photosynthetic partner makes food from sunlight. Together, they can survive in extreme environments that would kill most life. In 2005, scientists sent lichen to space, exposing them to the vacuum, intense radiation, and extreme temperature fluctuations outside the International Space Station for 15 days. When brought back to Earth, the lichen survived and even continued photosynthesizing. They showed minimal damage despite exposure to conditions lethal to nearly all other organisms. Lichen can also survive extreme heat, intense cold, complete dehydration, and high levels of radiation on Earth. They've been found in the driest deserts, the coldest Antarctic valleys, and the highest mountain peaks. They grow slowly, sometimes less than 1 millimeter per year, but they can live for thousands of years. Some lichen in the Arctic are estimated to be over 4,000 years old. They're pioneers, often the first organisms to colonize bare rock after volcanic eruptions or glacial retreat. They slowly break down rock, releasing minerals and creating the first thin soils that other plants will eventually use. They're also incredibly sensitive to air pollution, disappearing from areas with poor air quality. This makes them useful as biological indicators of environmental health. In their patient, quiet way, lichen represent some of the oldest living organisms on Earth, and perhaps among the most likely to survive if Earth ever faced another mass extinction. Mountains create their own weather. When wind encounters a mountain, it has nowhere to go but up. As air is forced upward along the mountain slope, it expands and cools due to decreasing pressure. Cool air can't hold as much moisture as warm air, so water vapor condenses into clouds and often precipitation. This is called orographic lift, and it's why the windward side of mountain ranges tends to be wet and lush, while the leeward side can be dry and barren. A phenomenon called a rain shadow. The Olympic Peninsula in Washington receives over 140 inches of rain per year on its western slopes, while just 50 miles away on the eastern side, rainfall drops to less than 20 inches. Mountains can also create powerful local winds. Air flowing over peaks can accelerate, creating winds much stronger than in surrounding lowlands. When air descends the leeward slope, it compresses and warms, creating warm, dry winds called foehn winds in Europe or chinook winds in North America. These winds can raise temperatures by 20 or 30 degrees in a matter of hours, melting snow rapidly. Mountains create unique cloud formations too. Lenticular clouds form when moist air flows over peaks, creating standing waves on the downwind side. These lens-shaped clouds appear to hover in one place, even in strong winds. Mountains don't just sit beneath the sky. They shape it, sculpting weather systems and determining where rain will fall, creating distinct climate zones on either side of their peaks. Mushrooms are the fruit of hidden organisms. When you see a mushroom pushing up through forest duff, you're only seeing a small part of the organism. The main body is underground, a network of thread-like structures called mycelium that can spread for acres beneath your feet. Mycelium is the feeding and growing part of the fungus. It secretes enzymes that break down dead organic matter, absorbing nutrients directly through its cell walls. The mushroom itself is just the reproductive structure, emerging briefly to produce and release spores before withering away. Some fungi produce mushrooms only under specific conditions of temperature and moisture. The mycelium might live for decades without producing a single mushroom, then suddenly fruit prolifically when conditions are right. Some fungi are enormous. The largest organism on Earth by area is a honey fungus in Oregon's Blue Mountains. Its mycelium covers over 2,000 acres and may be thousands of years old, possibly 8,000 years or more. Most of its life is spent invisible, working in darkness, connecting trees, decomposing wood, and quietly supporting the forest from below. Mycorrhizal fungi form partnerships with tree roots, extending far beyond the reach of roots and helping trees access water and nutrients. In return, trees provide the fungi with sugars from photosynthesis. This partnership is ancient, dating back hundreds of millions of years, and it may have been essential in allowing plants to colonize land. Without fungi, there would be no forests, no breakdown of dead matter, no nutrient cycling. They're the hidden architects of terrestrial ecosystems, working silently beneath our feet. Tides are caused by the moon's gravity. Twice a day, the ocean rises and falls in a rhythm set by the moon. As the moon orbits Earth, its gravitational pull tugs on the water in the oceans, creating a bulge on the side facing the moon. There's also a bulge on the opposite side, created by inertial forces as Earth and the Moon orbit their common center of mass. As Earth rotates beneath these bulges, coastal areas experience high tide when passing through a bulge and low tide in between. But tides are more complex than simple bulges. The shape of coastlines and the ocean floor can amplify or diminish tides dramatically. The Bay of Fundy in Canada experiences tides of over 50 feet, the highest in the world, because of its funnel shape and resonance with tidal periods. The sun also affects tides, though its influence is weaker because it's much farther away. When the sun, moon, and earth align during full and new moons, their gravitational effects combine, creating spring tides, which are especially high and low. When the sun and moon are at right angles during quarter moons, they partially cancel each other out, creating neap tides, which have smaller ranges. Tides shape coastlines, influence marine life, and have done so for billions of years. Many marine organisms time their reproduction, feeding, or movement to tidal cycles. Tides mix nutrients, expose tidal zones to air and water in cycles, and create dynamic environments where specialized organisms thrive. The moon, 240,000 miles away, reaches down and moves entire oceans, a gravitational dialogue between celestial bodies written in the rising and falling of seas. Soil is alive with billions of organisms. A single handful of healthy soil contains more living organisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, arthropods, and earthworms all live in the soil, creating one of the most complex ecosystems on the planet. Bacteria alone can number in the billions per gram of soil. These microorganisms break down organic matter, releasing nutrients that plants can absorb. They decompose dead leaves, wood, and animal remains, recycling nutrients back into the food web. Earthworms alone can process tons of soil per acre each year, aerating it, mixing nutrients, and creating tunnels that allow water and roots to penetrate deeper. Their castings, the digested soil they excrete, are incredibly rich in available nutrients. Mycorrhizal fungi extend the reach of plant roots, forming thread-like networks that access water and minerals far beyond where roots can reach. In return, plants provide fungi with sugars from photosynthesis. Soil isn't just dirt, inert and lifeless. It's a living ecosystem, a vast community working together beneath our feet. Soil takes centuries or millennia to form, starting with weathered rock and gradually building up organic matter. A single inch of topsoil can take 500 years to develop. And yet, erosion can wash it away in a single generation. Without this hidden world, nothing would grow. Life above ground depends entirely on life below, on the invisible workers breaking down, building up, cycling nutrients, and creating the foundation for all terrestrial ecosystems. Rainbows are personal. When you see a rainbow, you're seeing light refracted and reflected through millions of water droplets in the air. Sunlight enters a droplet, bends as it enters, reflects off the back of the droplet, and bends again as it exits. Different wavelengths bend by different amounts, separating white light into its component colors. Red bends the least and appears on the outer edge. Violet bends the most and appears on the inner edge. But the rainbow you see is unique to your position. Someone standing beside you sees a slightly different rainbow because they're viewing light from different droplets at a different angle. The arc of a rainbow is always centered on the point directly opposite the sun from your perspective, called the anti-solar point. If you move, your rainbow moves with you because you're seeing reflections from different droplets. No two people ever see exactly the same rainbow, and if you could see the full circle, which is only possible from an airplane or a mountain looking down at rain below, you'd see that rainbows are not arcs, but complete rings. The ground blocks the bottom half for observers on the surface. Sometimes you can see a double rainbow with a fainter secondary bow above the primary. This forms from light that reflects twice inside the water droplets, and its colors appear in reverse order. Each rainbow is a moment of physics and perception, unrepeatable and yours alone, a personal gift from geometry, light and water. Trees can live for thousands of years. The oldest living trees on Earth are bristlecone pines in the mountains of California and Nevada. Some are over 5,000 years old, alive since before the pyramids were built, before the invention of writing, before the rise of civilization. These trees survive in harsh conditions at high altitudes, in rocky soil, cold temperatures, and with very little water. Their wood is incredibly dense and resistant to decay, insects, and disease. They grow slowly, sometimes adding less than an inch of girth per century. But this slow growth is part of their longevity. Fast-growing trees tend to have shorter lifespans. Bristle cones endure. In their gnarled, twisted forms, sculptured by wind and ice, they hold thousands of years of climate data, recorded in their rings. Each ring tells a story of a single year, wet or dry, warm or cold, scarred by fire or untouched. By studying these rings, scientists can reconstruct climate patterns going back thousands of years. Some bristlecones have over 5,000 rings, each one a year in the life of the tree. They are living archives of deep time, witnesses to the rise and fall of civilizations, to changes in climate, to events long forgotten by human memory. Other species also achieve great age. Giant sequoias can live over 3,000 years. Olive trees in the Mediterranean are over 2,000 years old. In Tasmania, a clonal colony of Huon pines has been growing for over 10,000 years, making it one of the oldest living organisms. These ancient trees remind us that our human timescale is brief, that life can persist through centuries and millennia, patiently growing, enduring, and witnessing. Clouds weigh millions of pounds. Clouds look light and fluffy, drifting effortlessly through the sky, but they're surprisingly heavy. An average cumulus cloud, the puffy white clouds of fair weather, contains about 1.1 million pounds of water. How do they float if they're so heavy? The water is dispersed into countless tiny droplets, each so small that air resistance keeps it suspended. Each droplet might be only 10 to 20 microns in diameter, about the width of a human hair. The droplets are also widely spaced, spread throughout a large volume of air. Air currents provide enough upward lift to support the cloud's weight. Warm air rising from the ground creates updrafts that keep the droplets aloft. When droplets grow large enough through collisions and condensation, combining into drops heavy enough that air resistance can no longer support them, gravity wins and they fall as rain. Clouds are not weightless, they're balanced. Tons of water held aloft by invisible currents, constantly forming, shifting, and dissolving in an endless atmospheric dance. Different types of clouds contain different amounts of water. A large thunderstorm cloud can contain billions of pounds of water. These massive cumulonimbus clouds tower miles into the sky, with powerful updrafts that can lift droplets and even hailstones upward against gravity. When the updrafts weaken, the accumulated water falls as heavy rain. Clouds are visible evidence of water's journey through the atmosphere, evaporating from oceans and land, rising, cooling, condensing, and eventually falling back to Earth to begin the cycle again. Forests produce oxygen, but they also consume it. We often say that forests are the lungs of the Earth, producing oxygen through photosynthesis. This is true. During the day, trees capture sunlight and convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars and oxygen. The oxygen is released into the atmosphere. But trees also respire, using oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide, just like animals. Every cell in the tree performs cellular respiration to release energy from sugars. During the day, photosynthesis outpaces respiration, producing a net gain in oxygen. At night, photosynthesis stops because it requires light, and trees only respire. Over a forest's entire life cycle, including the decomposition of dead trees and fallen leaves by bacteria and fungi, which also consume oxygen, the oxygen production and consumption roughly balance out. The real value of mature forests in terms of atmospheric gases is not oxygen production, but carbon storage. They capture carbon dioxide and lock it away in wood and soil for centuries. Young, fast-growing forests actually produce more net oxygen than old-growth forests because they're rapidly building biomass. Old-growth forests store massive amounts of carbon, taking it out of the atmospheric cycle for long periods. Both are essential. Young forests for oxygen production and carbon uptake. Old forests for long-term carbon storage and biodiversity. Together, they help regulate Earth's atmosphere and climate. Waterfalls create their own mist and microclimates. Where water tumbles over an edge, it doesn't just fall smoothly. It shatters into droplets, creating mist that drifts through the surrounding air. The force of impact at the base throws water back into the air as spray and mist. This mist cools the area, increases humidity, and supports unique plant communities that thrive in the constant moisture. Mosses, ferns, liverworts, and specialized flowering plants grow densely around waterfalls, creating hanging gardens in the spray zone. The mist also creates rainbows when sunlight passes through it at the right angle. Sometimes you can see lunar rainbows, faint arcs visible in the mist of large waterfalls on moonlit nights. The sound of falling water is not a single note, but a complex chord of frequencies. White noise produced by thousands of turbulent impacts per second. The specific sound depends on the height of the fall, the volume of water, and what the water hits at the bottom. Researchers have found that the sound of waterfalls can have calming effects on humans, possibly because it masks other sounds and creates a sense of acoustic privacy. Standing near a waterfall, you're surrounded by water in all its forms: liquid, mist, and the faint negative ions released into the air when water droplets shatter. Some people believe these negative ions make you feel refreshed and energized, though the scientific evidence is mixed. Regardless, waterfalls create distinct microclimates, cooler and more humid than their surroundings, oases of moisture, even in otherwise dry regions. Frost forms intricate patterns unique to each surface. When water vapor in cold air comes into contact with a surface below freezing, it can transform directly into ice crystals without becoming liquid first. This process, called deposition, creates frost. It's the reverse of sublimation, where ice turns directly into vapor without melting. The patterns frost forms depend on microscopic irregularities in the surface, temperature, humidity, and the rate of freezing. On smooth glass, frost often grows in feather-like or fern-like patterns called frost flowers. The crystals start growing from tiny imperfections or dust particles on the glass, then branch outward in patterns determined by the hexagonal structure of ice and the local conditions. No two frost patterns are exactly alike, just like snowflakes. Window frost was more common before modern double-pane windows, which stay warmer on the inside. Each formation is temporary and unrepeatable. The same forces that create snowflakes create frost, molecular geometry and physics making beauty at the boundary between water and air. As the sun rises and temperatures increase, frost sublimates directly back into vapor or melts, depending on conditions. In the morning, sunlight melts it away, but for a few hours before dawn, every surface becomes a canvas, decorated with crystalline art. In some conditions, hoarfrost forms, creating thick layers of feathery ice crystals on trees and vegetation. These ice feathers can grow several inches long, transforming winter landscapes into magical, glittering forests. Rivers can run backwards during floods. Some rivers, during extreme flooding, can reverse their flow. The Mississippi River has occasionally pushed water backwards up the Illinois River during major floods. The sheer volume of water, trying to flow past a narrow point, creates a temporary dam, forcing water to back up into tributaries. The Tonle Sap River in Cambodia reverses direction seasonally, flowing backwards for half the year when the Mekong River swells with monsoon rains. During the wet season, the Mekong carries so much water that it forces the Tonle Sap River to reverse course and flow inland. This reversal fills Tonle Sap Lake, Sap, expanding it to several times its dry season size, making it one of the most productive freshwater fisheries in the world. The flood brings nutrients, fish, and new sediment. When the rains end and the Mekong's flow decreases, the river reverses again, draining the lake back into the Mekong. This annual cycle has shaped Cambodian culture and economy for centuries. Fish migrate with the reversing river, and people time their fishing and agriculture to the flood cycle. These reversals shape ecosystems and human cultures, creating cycles of abundance and renewal. Rivers are not one-way streets. Under the right conditions, they can change their minds, flowing backward as easily as forward, responding to the larger forces of water and gravity. Dew forms from the air, not the ground. In the early morning, you might see grass, leaves, and spiderwebs covered in tiny droplets of dew, sparkling in the first light. This dew doesn't come from moisture in the ground rising up. It forms when surfaces cool overnight to a temperature below the dew point of surrounding air. As night falls and the sun's heating stops, the ground and any objects on it radiate heat and cool down. If they cool below the dew point, water vapor in the air condenses directly onto these cool surfaces, forming droplets. Clear, calm nights allow more radiative cooling, which is why dew is more common after such nights. Cloudy nights trap heat and prevent surfaces from cooling enough for dew to form. Wind also prevents dew by mixing warmer air down to the surface. In dry climates, dew can be an important water source for plants and small animals. Some desert plants have structures designed to capture dew and channel it to their roots. Insects can drink from dew droplets. Each droplet is a small condensation event, air giving up its moisture to the solid world, bridging the gap between vapor and liquid. The pattern of dew can tell you about local conditions. Dew forms first on surfaces that cool fastest, like metal or grass. Wood and soil retain heat longer and may not develop dew. Dew is nature's distillation, pure water condensed from air, available for a few hours before the sun evaporates it back into the atmosphere. Peat bogs preserve history. Peat bogs are wetlands where plant material accumulates faster than it can decompose, building up layers of partially decayed vegetation over thousands of years. The waterlogged, acidic, oxygen-poor environment prevents normal decay processes, preserving whatever falls into it with remarkable fidelity. Archaeologists have found ancient bodies, called bog bodies, perfectly preserved for thousands of years. Their skin, hair, and even fingerprints intact. Tools, clothing, pottery, and even entire wooden roads and causeways have been pulled from peat bogs, offering windows into ancient life. The acidic, oxygen-poor conditions prevent bacteria and fungi from breaking down organic matter. The same chemicals that tan leather, naturally occurring tannins in the bog water, tan skin, preserving it for millennia. These bogs also store vast amounts of carbon, more per acre than forests. Peatlands cover only about 3% of Earth's land surface, but contain roughly 30% of all soil carbon. They've been accumulating carbon since the end of the last ice age, layer upon layer, year after year. They're archives of climate and human history, recording pollen, plant material, and atmospheric conditions in their layers. Scientists can core into peat bogs and read the layers like pages in a book, reconstructing climate changes and vegetation patterns going back thousands of years. Draining or burning peatlands releases this ancient carbon, contributing to climate change. Protecting bogs means protecting time itself, preserved in wet, spongy earth. Wind shapes rocks over time. In deserts and coastal areas, wind carries sand and dust particles that act like sandpaper on exposed rock. Over centuries and millennia, this abrasion carves rocks into smooth, flowing shapes called ventifact. The process is slow, but relentless. Sand grains, lifted by wind, strike rock surfaces thousands of times. Where wind consistently blows from one direction, rocks develop smooth, polished faces on the windward side. Natural arches, balanced rocks, and peculiar formations are often the result of differential erosion, where softer layers wear away faster than harder layers. In the American Southwest, wind has sculpted sandstone into fantastic shapes, arches, and hoodoos. The wind also sorts particles by size, carrying lighter dust far away and leaving heavier grains behind. Over time, this creates desert pavements, where the surface is paved with polished stones, and all the finer material has been blown away. These pavements can take thousands of years to develop and are easily disturbed by vehicles or foot traffic. Wind is not empty air. It's a sculptor, a force that shapes the world grain by grain. It works invisibly, patiently, wearing away rock, moving sediment, and creating landscapes that speak of the prevailing winds. Even in seemingly still deserts, wind is always working, always reshaping, leaving its signature in the smooth curves of windswept stone. Some lakes have layers that don't mix. Certain lakes develop distinct layers of water with different temperatures, oxygen levels, and even chemistry. In summer, warm water sits on top because it's less dense than cold water. Cold, dense water stays at the bottom. These layers don't mix easily, sometimes remaining separate for months. The boundary between them is called a thermocline, a zone where temperature drops rapidly with depth. In some deep lakes, especially in tropical regions, layers can become permanently stratified, never mixing. The bottom layer may become oxygen depleted, creating anoxic conditions where only specialized bacteria and other microorganisms adapted to low oxygen can survive. Fish and other oxygen-dependent organisms can't venture into these depths. Twice a year, in spring and fall, many temperate lakes undergo turnover. As surface water cools in fall, it becomes denser and sinks, bringing nutrients from the bottom to the surface and oxygen from the surface to the depths. The same process happens in spring as ice melts. This turnover is essential for lake health, redistributing oxygen and nutrients throughout the water column. It's a seasonal breath for the lake, a mixing that refreshes the entire system. Some lakes have additional chemical stratification. Meromictic lakes have layers that differ in salinity or dissolved minerals, creating permanent stratification. The Dead Sea and some crater lakes are meromictic, with dense, salty water permanently settled at the bottom, beneath fresher water above. Fire is essential for some ecosystems. Some plants have evolved to not just tolerate fire, but depend on it for their survival and reproduction. Jack pine cones, for example, are sealed with a resin that only melts in the extreme heat of a fire. Under normal conditions, the cones remain closed on the tree for years. When fire sweeps through, the heat melts the resin, the cones open, and seeds are released onto the newly cleared nutrient-rich ash. This gives the seeds an ideal environment for germination, with reduced competition and abundant nutrients. Prairie grasses have deep roots that survive fire while the surface burns, allowing them to resprout quickly after fire passes. Fire clears dead material, reduces competition from woody plants, and returns nutrients locked in dead vegetation to the soil as ash. Many ecosystems, from California chaparral to African savannas to longleaf pine forests, are shaped by regular fires. These are called fire-adapted or fire-dependent ecosystems. Some trees, like giant sequoias, have thick bark that insulates them from fire damage. Others, like lodgepole pines, have serotinous cones that only open after fire. Suppressing all fires in these ecosystems can lead to dangerous fuel buildup. Without regular low-intensity fires to clear undergrowth, fuel accumulates for decades. When fire finally comes, it burns much hotter and more destructively than natural fires would. Fire is not always destruction. Sometimes it's renewal, a reset button that allows certain ecosystems to thrive, clearing the stage for new growth and maintaining the diversity and health of fire-adapted landscapes. Stalactites and stalagmites take thousands of years to form. In caves, water seeps through rock above, dissolving small amounts of calcium carbonate from the limestone. When this mineral-rich water drips from the ceiling, some of the dissolved minerals are left behind as the water evaporates or releases carbon dioxide. Drop by drop, year after year, these deposits build up. Stalactites hang from above, growing downward like icicles of stone. They form as each drop leaves behind a tiny ring of calcium carbonate before falling. Over centuries, these rings stack and merge, creating hollow tubes that eventually fill in and thicken. Stalagmites rise from below, growing upward where the drips land on the cave floor. Sometimes they meet in the middle, forming a column that connects floor to ceiling. Growth is incredibly slow, often less than a millimeter per year, though the exact rate depends on water flow, mineral content, and cave conditions. Some formations are millions of years old. They're sculptures made by water and time, silent cathedrals built in total darkness, one drip at a time. Cave formations come in many shapes beyond simple stalactites and stalagmites. There are flowstones that look like frozen waterfalls, delicate soda straws, that are hollow tubes, draperies that hang in rippling sheets, and helictites that defy gravity with twisted, curving shapes. Each forms through slight variations in water, chemistry, flow patterns, and mineral content. Caves are galleries of natural art, created without light, without observers, simply through the patient work of water, dissolving and depositing stone. The color of a lake depends on what's in it. Water itself is slightly blue when seen in large volumes, but most lakes reflect their surroundings and are colored by what they contain. A lake might look green from abundant algae performing photosynthesis. It might appear brown from tannins leached from decaying plants, giving it a tea-colored hue. White or milky coloration can come from glacial silt, fine rock flour ground by moving glaciers and suspended in the water. Some lakes are brilliant turquoise due to this glacial flour. The fine particles scatter light, reflecting blue and green wavelengths preferentially. Lake Louise and Moraine Lake in the Canadian Rockies owe their stunning colors to glacial melt carrying this fine sediment. Crater Lake in Oregon is one of the bluest lakes in the world because it's so deep and pure, with few particles or organisms to scatter light differently. The lake's color is essentially the color of pure water, intensified by depth. Light penetrates deep into the exceptionally clear water, and the blue wavelengths that aren't absorbed are scattered back to the surface. Every lake is a different shade, a unique mixture of water, light, and life. Some lakes even change color seasonally. A lake might be blue in winter when it's cold and clear, then green in summer when algae blooms. The color tells a story about what's happening in the water, what's growing, what's dissolved, what's suspended. It's a visible signature of the lake's chemistry and biology. Moss doesn't harm trees. Moss growing on tree bark might seem parasitic, but it's not. Moss has no roots that penetrate the tree. It simply uses the bark as a surface to cling to, an anchor point. It absorbs all the water and nutrients it needs from rain, fog, and air, not from the tree itself. In fact, moss can benefit trees in subtle ways. It provides habitat for insects, including predators and parasites of tree pests, creating a mini ecosystem on the bark. It retains moisture, which can help regulate the tree's microclimate and prevent the bark from drying out excessively. Moss grows best on older trees, with rough bark that provides good attachment points, and in damp, shaded conditions. This is why people sometimes associate moss with declining trees. But the moss is an indicator, not a cause. It simply marks where the conditions are right for its quiet, patient way of life. Moss tends to grow more abundantly on the north side of trees in the northern hemisphere, where there's more shade and less evaporation, giving rise to the old navigation technique of using moss to find north. Though this is not entirely reliable, as local conditions vary. Moss on trees is part of a healthy forest ecosystem, providing green cover year-round, supporting small invertebrates and adding to the forest's biodiversity. It's a gentle presence, living on the surface, taking nothing from the tree, simply finding a place to exist in the vertical world of the forest. Sand dunes sing. In certain deserts around the world, sand dunes produce deep, haunting sounds described as humming, booming, or roaring. This phenomenon, known as singing sand or booming dunes, occurs when sand grains slide down the dune's face in just the right way. The friction between thousands or millions of grains vibrating at specific frequencies creates sound waves that resonate within the dune itself, amplifying the sound. Different dunes produce different notes, from low rumbles at around 50 to 100 Hz to higher tones, depending on grain size, shape, moisture content, and the internal structure of the dune. The grains must be a specific size, perfectly dry, and uniform in composition. The sound can last for several minutes and be heard for miles. Scientists have studied singing dunes for decades, but the exact mechanism is still debated. It seems to require a critical thickness of the sliding sand layer and a specific rate of flow. Not all dunes can sing, and a singing dune can lose its voice if the sand becomes contaminated or too moist. To those who hear it, the experience is otherworldly. The desert itself seems to be singing, a deep, rumbling voice rising from the sand, as if the landscape has found a way to speak. People have reported hearing these dunes for centuries, and some cultures developed myths about them, attributing the sounds to spirits, demons, or underground bells. Volcanic soil is incredibly fertile. After an eruption, volcanic landscapes look lifeless, covered in ash and lava, devoid of plants or visible organisms. But over time, this barren land becomes some of the richest soil on Earth. Volcanic ash contains minerals like potassium, phosphorus, calcium, and magnesium that plants need to grow. These minerals are locked in rock deep underground, but volcanic eruptions bring them to the surface in a form that's relatively easy for plants to access. As the ash weathers, it breaks down into fine, nutrient-rich particles. Basaltic lava, in particular, weathers into fertile soil. Regions near active volcanoes like parts of Italy, Indonesia, Hawaii, and the Pacific Northwest have supported dense populations for millennia because their soils are so productive. The danger of living near a volcano is balanced by the fertility it provides. In Java, one of the most densely populated places on Earth, volcanic soils support intensive agriculture, despite frequent eruptions. The cycle of destruction and renewal creates a landscape where life returns quickly after each eruption. Within years, plants begin to colonize the bare rock. Within decades, forests can return. The life cycle of volcanic landscapes is faster than in many other environments because the raw materials for life are so abundant. Life doesn't just survive volcanic eruptions, it thrives in their aftermath, transforming destruction into abundance, ash into harvest. Tide pools are miniature ecosystems. Between high and low tide, rocky coastlines create pools where seawater is temporarily trapped. These tide pools become isolated worlds twice a day, exposed to sun, wind, temperature swings, and predators, then reconnected to the ocean as the tide returns. Yet, they're full of life. Sea anemones anchor to rocks with their adhesive bases, extending tentacles to catch food when submerged. Starfish cling to rocks with hundreds of tube feet. Crabs scuttle between crevices. Snails graze on algae. Barnacles, permanently glued to rocks, open their shells when submerged and extend feathery legs to catch plankton. Small fish hide in the deeper pools. All these organisms adapt to a challenging environment. Some can withstand being dried out for hours, then rehydrate when the tide returns. Anemones pull in their tentacles and become jelly-like blobs to retain moisture. Barnacles seal their shells. Others burrow or hide under rocks and seaweed to stay moist. Tide pools change dramatically throughout the day. As water evaporates, salinity increases. Temperature shifts with the sun. Oxygen levels can drop if the pool is crowded with organisms and plants using it up. When the tide returns, fresh seawater brings oxygen, food, and new organisms, refreshing the pool. They're laboratories of adaptation, showing how life copes with constant change in a world between two realms, neither fully land nor fully sea. Forests have different layers. A mature forest is not uniform. It's structured in vertical layers, each with its own community of plants and animals. The canopy is the upper layer, where the tallest trees spread their crowns, forming a continuous or nearly continuous cover. This is where most photosynthesis occurs, where most of the forest's leaves and flowers are found. The canopy can be 100 feet or more above the ground in old-growth forests. Below is the understory, consisting of smaller trees and saplings adapted to lower light levels. These trees wait for openings in the canopy, growing slowly in the shade until a large tree falls and creates a light gap. The shrub layer consists of woody bushes and young trees, even more shade-tolerant. The herb layer includes ferns, wildflowers, grasses, and other non-woody plants. At ground level is the forest floor, covered in leaf litter, fallen branches, fungi, and mosses. Each layer provides different resources and habitats. Birds might nest in the canopy, where they find insects, fruits, and protection from ground predators. Deer browse in the understory on shrubs and young trees. Salamanders, beetles, and earthworms live in the leaf litter, breaking down dead material. Fungi fruit on decaying logs. Together, these layers create a complex, three-dimensional ecosystem where different organisms occupy different niches. Light decreases as you move down through the layers, so each level is adapted to different light intensities. Understanding these layers helps us understand how forests function as integrated systems. Permafrost contains ancient life. In the Arctic and subarctic, soil remains frozen year-round, sometimes for thousands of years. This permafrost extends deep underground in some places, hundreds of feet below the surface. It preserves organic material in remarkable condition. Plant matter, ancient soils, and even entire animals have been found frozen in permafrost. Woolly mammoths, ancient horses, Ice Age lions, and other extinct creatures have been discovered remarkably intact, their bodies freeze-dried in time. Some have preserved fur, skin, and even stomach contents, offering scientists unprecedented insights into Ice Age life. As climate warms and permafrost thaws, this organic material begins to decompose. Bacteria and fungi that were dormant in the frozen soil become active and start breaking down organic matter, releasing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. This creates a feedback loop. Warming melts permafrost, releasing greenhouse gases, which causes more warming. But thawing permafrost also reveals biological treasures. Scientists have revived microorganisms frozen for tens of thousands of years. Some ancient bacteria, frozen for 30,000 years or more, have been brought back to life in laboratories. This raises interesting questions about dormancy, survival, and the limits of life. Permafrost is both a time capsule and a ticking clock, holding the past while influencing the future. It covers about a quarter of the Northern Hemisphere's land surface, containing twice as much carbon as currently exists in the atmosphere. Its fate is intimately tied to our climate's future. Mangroves protect coastlines. Mangrove trees grow in coastal saltwater, their specialized roots creating dense tangles above the waterline. These roots, visible at low tide, form complex three-dimensional structures that stabilize shorelines. They trap sediment carried by tides and rivers, reducing erosion and actually building land over time. Mangroves can advance seaward, colonizing newly deposited sediment and expanding coastal habitat. During storms and tsunamis, mangrove forests act as natural barriers, absorbing wave energy and reducing the impact on inland areas. Studies have shown that coastal areas with intact mangrove forests suffer less damage during hurricanes and tsunamis than areas where mangroves have been removed. The dense roots slow water flow and dissipate energy. They also create vital habitat for fish, crustaceans, and birds. Many commercial fish species spend part of their lives in mangrove nurseries, protected from predators among the roots. Oysters, mussels, and barnacles attach to the roots. Mud crabs burrow in the sediment. Herons, egrets, and other wading birds hunt in the shallows. Despite their importance, mangrove forests have been widely cleared for coastal development, shrimp farming, and other uses. About half of the world's mangroves have been lost in the last century. Protecting and restoring mangroves protects communities, fisheries, and biodiversity. They're guardians of the coast, standing where land meets sea, buffering the transition between terrestrial and marine worlds, creating habitat, protecting shores, and sustaining life in the dynamic intertidal zone. Granite contains crystals formed miles underground. Granite is an igneous rock that forms when molten magma cools slowly deep beneath Earth's surface. This slow cooling, taking thousands or millions of years, allows large crystals to grow. If the same magma cooled quickly at the surface, it would form fine-grained rock or volcanic glass instead. The visible crystals in granite are primarily quartz, feldspar, and mica, each forming distinct shapes and colors. Quartz appears glassy and translucent. Feldspar is often pink, white, or gray. Mica forms shiny, flat flakes that catch the light. Together, they create the speckled appearance of granite. It can take millions of years for granite to form, deep in the Earth's crust where temperatures and pressures are extreme, then be uplifted and exposed at the surface through tectonic forces. Mountain building pushes the granite upward. Erosion removes the overlying rock. Eventually, granite that formed miles underground becomes exposed, appearing in mountain cores, cliffs, and outcrops. When you touch granite, you're touching rock that was born in heat and darkness miles below, then slowly raised into the light. The crystals you see formed in conditions of immense pressure and temperature, growing slowly in magma chambers, then waited patiently, sometimes for hundreds of millions of years, to be revealed at the surface. Granite is incredibly durable, resistant to weathering, which is why it's used for monuments, buildings, and countertops. The same properties that allow it to survive deep in the earth help it endure at the surface. Rivers slow down as they age. Young rivers in mountains flow fast and straight, cutting through rock with the erosive power of fast-moving water carrying sediment and boulders. They create V-shaped valleys, steep and narrow. The gradient is steep, so gravity accelerates the water. As they reach flatter land and their gradient decreases, they slow down, depositing sediment instead of carrying it. Heavier particles drop out first, creating gravel bars. Finer sediment settles in slower sections. As rivers slow, they start to meander, creating S-shaped curves. Water flows faster on the outside of each bend, eroding the bank. It flows slower on the inside, depositing sediment. Over time, the meanders become more pronounced, looping back on themselves. Old rivers wind through broad floodplains, creating oxbow lakes when meanders loop so far they cut themselves off from the main channel. The river's power shifts from vertical erosion, cutting downward, to lateral erosion, widening the valley, and deposition, spreading sediment across the floodplain. Instead of cutting down, it builds up. This aging process creates diverse habitats and fertile lands. The sediment deposited during floods is rich in nutrients. Civilizations have risen along old, slow rivers because of the rich soils they deposit. The Nile, the Mississippi, the Ganges. These rivers have supported agriculture and civilization for millennia with their annual or periodic floods, depositing layers of fertile silt. Rivers have life cycles, born in mountains, maturing on plains, and finally merging with the sea, where they deposit their remaining sediment in deltas, building new land at the ocean's edge. Spider webs are stronger than steel. Silk produced by spiders is one of nature's most remarkable materials. By weight, some spider silk is stronger than steel and more elastic than rubber. This combination of strength and elasticity makes it ideal for catching prey. A web can absorb the kinetic energy of a flying insect without breaking. Spiders produce different types of silk for different purposes. Dragline silk, which forms the web's framework, is the strongest. Sticky, spiral silk captures prey. Fine silk wraps eggs. Spiders can produce these different silks from different glands, each formulation precisely tuned for its function. A web is an engineering marvel, designed to be strong where needed and flexible where necessary. The radial threads provide structural support. The spiral threads stretch to absorb impact. When an insect flies into the web, the threads deform and dissipate energy, preventing the web from tearing. The spider monitors vibrations through the web, detecting the size and location of prey without seeing it. Different vibrations indicate different situations. Prey struggling, wind blowing, or another spider approaching. Each morning, many orb weaver spiders eat their old webs and spin new ones, recycling the protein. It takes about an hour to build a new web. The silk is liquid, protein inside the spider's body, but solidifies into fiber as it's pulled out through the spinnerets. The transformation from liquid to solid happens almost instantaneously. Scientists have tried to replicate spider silk for decades, hoping to create a super strong, lightweight material for applications from medicine to aerospace. Its architecture, trap, and sensory organ all in one, produced by a small animal using only the materials in its body. The oldest water on Earth is billions of years old. Deep underground in mines and ancient rock formations, scientists have found water that has been isolated for billions of years. Some pockets of water in Canadian mines are estimated to be 1.5 to 2.6 billion years old, sealed in rock since before complex life existed on Earth's surface. This water was trapped when the rocks formed, then remained isolated as the rocks were buried deeper. It contains dissolved minerals and gases from ancient chemical reactions, providing clues about early Earth's chemistry and geology. The water is incredibly salty, much saltier than seawater, and contains gases like hydrogen and methane as produced by reactions between water and rock. Studying this water gives scientists insights into what early Earth was like and about the potential for life in extreme environments. Similar isolated pockets of ancient water might exist on other planets or moons. suggesting that water, once present, can persist for billions of years in protected environments. Water doesn't have an expiration date. It cycles and transforms, moving from ocean to atmosphere, to land and back. But some molecules escape this cycle, trapped in rock or ice. They can remain there for eons, unchanging, waiting. When we drink water, some of the molecules we're drinking might have fallen as rain on dinosaurs, or been part of ancient oceans. Water is endlessly recycled, but some of it journeys through Earth's depths, isolated and ancient, holding secrets from a time before life as we know it. Canyons form through erosion, not earthquakes. It's tempting to imagine that canyons were ripped open by sudden geological violence, dramatic events that split the earth. But most form gradually, carved by water over millions of years. Rivers cut downward, especially when the land is being uplifted by tectonic forces. The river maintains its course while the land rises around it, causing it to cut deeper. Over millions of years, a river can carve through thousands of feet of rock. The shape of a canyon depends on rock type and climate. Soft layers erode quickly, creating ledges and terraces. Hard layers resist, forming cliffs and vertical walls. In arid climates, there's little vegetation to hold soil, so erosion is more efficient, creating sheer walls. In humid climates, weathering and plant growth round edges and create more vegetation on canyon slopes. Wind, rain, freezing, and thawing all contribute to canyon formation. Water seeps into cracks, freezes and expands, wedging rocks apart. This freeze-thaw cycle breaks down rock faces. Debris falls to the canyon bottom, where the river carries it away. What looks like a scar torn into the earth is actually the patient work of erosion, grain by grain, year by year. The Grand Canyon has been forming for about 6 million years, though the rocks it cuts through are much older, up to 2 billion years. Standing at the rim, you're looking at a landscape shaped by persistence, by water following gravity, by time measured in geological epochs. Canyons are not wounds. They're passages carved by time, exposing layer after layer of Earth's history in their walls. Thunderstorms can create their own wind. As a thunderstorm develops, warm, moist air rises rapidly in an updraft, sometimes at speeds over 100 miles per hour. This rising air creates the towering cumulonimbus clouds characteristic of thunderstorms. When this air reaches high altitude, it cools. Water vapor condenses, releasing heat that fuels more rising air. Eventually, the air reaches the top of the troposphere and spreads outward, creating the anvil-shaped top of mature thunderstorms. Meanwhile, rain and hail falling from the storm drag air downward in a downdraft. As this cool, dense air descends, it accelerates. When it hits the ground, it spreads out horizontally in all directions as a gust front or outflow boundary. These winds can be powerful and sudden, sometimes reaching 60 miles per hour or more, arriving before the rain. This is why you might feel a blast of cool wind just before a storm hits. The temperature can drop 10 or 20 degrees in minutes as the outflow arrives. The dust and debris kicked up by the gust front can sometimes be seen as a wall of dust or shelf cloud preceding the storm. The storm is not just carried by wind. It generates its own, sculpting the air around it, creating its own weather system within the larger atmosphere. In severe thunderstorms, these outflows can collide with inflowing air, creating rotation that can spawn tornadoes. The storm becomes a self-sustaining system, a weather factory producing wind, rain, lightning, and sometimes hail and tornadoes, all from the initial contrast between warm and cold air masses. Some valleys were carved by glaciers. Not all valleys are made by rivers. In mountainous regions, you'll find U-shaped valleys with steep sides and flat bottoms, distinctly different from the V-shaped valleys carved by rivers. These were formed by glaciers. As ice accumulates in mountain basins and begins to flow downhill under its own weight, it plucks rocks from the valley walls and drags them along, grinding the bedrock beneath. Unlike rivers, which carve narrow channels, glaciers bulldoze entire valleys, wider and deeper. The ice can be hundreds or thousands of feet thick, filling the valley from side to side. It scours the walls smooth and carves a flat or gently rounded bottom. When the glacier melts, it leaves behind a transformed landscape. Sometimes these valleys fill with water, becoming fjords if connected to the ocean or glacial lakes if landlocked. The Yosemite Valley was carved by glaciers during ice ages. So were many valleys in the Alps, Norway, New Zealand, and other mountainous regions. Hanging valleys, where tributary glaciers once joined the main glacier at the same ice level, are left high on the valley walls when the ice melts. Waterfalls cascade from these hanging valleys down to the main valley floor. The landscape shaped by glaciers has a distinctive appearance. Smooth bedrock, U-shaped valleys, cirques where glaciers formed, moraines where they deposited debris, and erratic boulders carried far from their origin. They're evidence of ice's power to reshape mountains, transforming them more dramatically than water ever could, carving on a monumental scale during ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. Coastlines are constantly changing. Waves crash against shores thousands of times a day, carrying energy from distant storms across hundreds or thousands of miles of ocean. When waves reach shallow water, they slow and rise, eventually breaking and releasing their energy against the shore. Over time, this reshapes the coast. Soft rock erodes quickly, forming bays and coves. Hard rock resists, creating headlands that jut into the sea. The eternal battle between land and sea creates an intricate coastline of ins and outs. Beaches are built from sediment carried by rivers and ocean currents, then redistributed by waves. Sand moves along the coast, transported by longshore currents. What's eroded from one beach may be deposited on another. Barrier islands form offshore, protecting mainland coasts. These islands are dynamic, migrating landward during storms and sea level rise. Some islands appear and disappear within human lifetimes. Sea level changes also reshape coasts dramatically. During ice ages, when water is locked in glaciers, sea levels drop by hundreds of feet, and coastlines extend far onto what is now the ocean floor. When ice melts, seas rise, drowning former coastlines and river valleys, creating estuaries and bays. The edge between land and sea is never fixed. It's a dynamic boundary, constantly negotiated between geology and the ocean's restless energy. Even rocky coasts change. Wave action creates sea caves, arches, and eventually stacks as erosion continues. What was once a headland becomes an island, then a series of rocks, then disappears entirely, claimed by the sea. And now, as we reach the end of our journey through nature's quiet wonders, let yourself rest fully. We've wandered through forests where trees speak to each other through underground networks. We've seen mountains rise and fall over millions of years. We've watched rivers carve canyons and glaciers sculpt valleys. We've explored deserts that bloom and lakes that sing. We've discovered the ancient and the ephemeral, the microscopic and the vast. And through it all, one truth emerges. Nature is a continuous conversation, an endless exchange of energy and information, of give and take, of growth and decay. Everything connects. The moss on a tree supports insects that feed birds. The fungi beneath the forest connect tree roots and share nutrients. The rain that falls today will flow through rivers, seep into aquifers, rise as fog, and fall again somewhere else tomorrow. You are part of this cycle, made from the same elements, following the same patterns, breathing the same air that has been breathed for millions of years. Your body contains water that once fell as rain on ancient forests, minerals that were forged in stars, carbon that cycled through countless organisms before becoming you. Let these thoughts settle gently into your mind. There's no need to remember every detail. The facts will be here when you return. What matters now is the feeling, the sense of belonging to something vast and ancient. You are not separate from the rivers, the mountains, the singing dunes, the forests breathing out oxygen and mist. You are nature becoming aware of itself, looking back at its own reflection, marveling at its own complexity and beauty. So close your eyes if they're not already closed. Feel the weight of your body, supported by the earth beneath you. Feel your breath, part of the same atmosphere that lifts clouds and carries seeds across continents. Feel your heartbeat, a rhythm that echoes in every living thing, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale. You are safe. You are connected. You are home. And the world continues its slow, patient work all around you. Trees are growing, imperceptibly slowly, adding rings. Rivers are flowing, carrying sediment to the sea. Mountains are rising, millimeter by millimeter. Glaciers are flowing, seeds are waiting. All the processes we've explored tonight continue in darkness and in light, unobserved and unstoppable, following patterns written into the fabric of existence. Let yourself drift now. Let your thoughts grow soft at the edges. The journey doesn't end. It simply pauses here until curiosity calls again. And when you wake, you'll wake to the same world we've explored tonight. But perhaps you'll see it with new eyes. Perhaps you'll notice the moss on trees, the patterns of frost, the way light catches water droplets. Perhaps you'll remember that you're walking through a living conversation, a world that speaks in whispers and echoes, in cycles and seasons, in growth and return. Thank you for joining us on the Cozy Curiosity channel. If you enjoyed this journey through the quiet symphony of nature, consider subscribing for more soothing explorations of science and wonder. Leave a comment sharing your favorite fact or what you'd like to learn about next. What aspect of nature speaks to you? And if this video helped you relax or fall asleep, a like helps others find this peaceful corner of the internet, this place where learning and rest come together. Until next time, sleep well. Dream of forests and mountains, of rivers carving their patient paths, of seeds waiting in darkness, of ancient water deep in the earth. Dream of the beautiful, intricate, interconnected world we share, and let curiosity carry you into gentle dreams. Good night.